Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michael, this is Pokeos. If you're new to the channel, we predominantly talk about Pokemon card investing here and a little bit of news. And if you've been hanging around the channel for a while, you would also realize that predominantly talk about sealed Pokemon card investing. Today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be talking about singles a little bit more. And a strategy to make money essentially using some economic principles on singles Pokemon cards. Now, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Pokemon cards, and people say it all the time, like there's no rhyme and reason to it. You can't apply any, market or economic principles to Pokemon because it's such an emotionally driven hobby. And look, we've seen that perhaps more than ever in the last 3 months. Like if you bought particular singles in the last 3 or 6 months, you would well and truly be realizing some massive gains by now. And hats off to you if you've made some awesome plays and made some money out of it. Because what's wrong with making money? It feels like everyone's made to be feeling bad if they're making money in this hobby at the moment. That's the name of the game. You put in the risk, you risk the reward, or you risk the negative outcome, which is losing some money or all of your money in some instances. So if you're in it, you've got to be in it to win it, don't you, essentially? But you've got to put your money in and you risk losing it or getting the reward. So I don't like this whole notion where, people are demonized for trying to make a little bit of money out of the hobby. Anyway, before we jump into it, I want to talk you through market cap. And personally, I quite like trying to transfer economic or market principles into the Pokemon card world because, look, I also agree that it's an emotionally driven hobby and it's so hard to find exact, principles that will work here, but it's also fun trying to apply economic principles and see if we can find any trends amongst the data. That's part of the fun of it. And if you're watching a Pokemon investing channel, well, no doubt some of you guys or girls are somewhat interested in the data and the numerical side of it and trying to figure out patterns and, patterns or rhyme and reason for all the numbers that we're seeing with Pokemon cards. So I want to start off talking about market cap and how we can transfer that into Pokemon cards, particularly singles. So we're going to start with some theory and then get into some practical. So how can we practically apply this advice to maybe make some money out of Pokemon cards? Before we do that though, I just wanted to give a shout out to the very new sponsor, the Collectr app. Finally joined up with the Collectr app. It's been a little bit of a time coming, but we've joined up and we've made it happen. If you don't know the Collectr app, I urge you to download it. It'll be in the description of this video. It's an awesome app. You can do anything and everything in there. If you're a collector or an investor, you can log your whole collection, both singles and sealed. You can also log your whole investment, both singled and sealed. It'll track your total investments daily. It'll give you percentage gains, losses, hopefully gains. It'll show you total money spent, total gains that you've made. It's such a good app. There's card scanning, so it's nice and easy to scan it through. There's also a pro version which unlocks heaps of new features. So that's very easy to sign up to if you want to. All the links in the description for the Collectr app to jump on board. And I'll be, you'll notice me if you've been on there, we'll be down in the content creators section very soon on there. So awesome to pair up with the Collectr app. Now, back onto the video. Market cap and how it applies to Pokemon cards. Now, I quite like, I know I certainly don't have a degree in economics or marketing or anything like that, but I quite enjoy it. I really enjoy it. I've been in the car industry for a very long time and there's so many market principles that we can apply to this and so many of them correlate to Pokemon cards as well. But in case you don't know what market cap is, basically in the share market, a market cap is the total value of a publicly traded company's shares. Pretty straightforward. So if it were to turn into an equation, so to speak, a market cap equals the share price times the total number of shares. So if there's 20 million shares and they're $100 each, 20 million times 100 equals $2 billion. So the total market cap is $2 billion. So just to reaffirm, the market cap is the total value of a publicly traded company's shares. Like the total value of the shares. It can't get much more simple than that. So what does it tell us and why is it even relevant to Pokemon cards? Well, I suppose in the business world or the general economy world, it tells us a few things. It sort of indicates a business's stage, doesn't it? Like if a business is early on and has a small cap, maybe there's plenty of room for that business to grow. And if you invest in it, it could be quite an aggressive investment, but it could also be quite a risky investment. Whereas something with a really high or a really large market cap is probably an extremely well-established company, which could also have some room for more growth, but it's generally going to be a little bit of a safer investment. So what does all this mean? How can we transfer this to Pokemon cards? Now keep in mind it's really, really difficult. Like, how do we know how many Pokemon cards of a particular card or a particular set or a particular, well, we know the year has been printed. It's so hard to know that. Like, it's impossible on singles to know exactly how many have been printed. It's also impossible to know how many booster boxes have been printed. I'm going to do a video very shortly having a guess at those things. An educated guess, but that's for the next video. But how do we know? One thing we do know though, there is one thing that we can work out a market cap for in singles Pokemon cards, which we can then transfer to a practical money-making activity, so to speak, albeit a risky one. So there is of course risk involved in it. But one thing we do know is we do know total PSA 10 population. We know that. And if we think of that as the total number of shares, we get the same equation. Market cap equals total number of shares times the value of those shares. So if we turn that into PSA graded cards, market cap equals total number of graded cards in a PSA 10 multiplied by the value of a PSA 10 or the current market value of a PSA 10. That's going to give us a market cap. Now let me transfer that into a few cards for you. Now I think this might interest you guys and girls at home, even if you're not into this strategy, the practical strategy that I'll get to shortly, this might interest you. Some of these facts are really interesting. So let's start with one, right? A card that's been absolutely popping off lately, and that's Bubble Mew. There are currently, and this could have changed from the last day that I looked at this data, because I looked at it yesterday before filming today, but there's currently 7,718 PSA 10 Bubble Mews in existence. Current market price is $910 US. Again, if we use that equation, market cap equals total values of shares, total number of shares, so total number of PSA 10 cards, times the share price, or in this case, the PSA 10 price, so 7,718 multiplied by $910 gives us a market cap for Bubble Mew in a PSA 10 of $7,023,380. That's a pretty damn high number. And I'm going to get to this practical strategy in a second, but I thought these two would really interest you. And you might think, well, which PSA 10 Pokemon card has the highest market cap? Doesn't that mean it's the most successful PSA 10 card? It holds the highest market cap out of any PSA 10 card in existence. Check out this. First edition Charizard, right? There is 125 PSA 10 copies. Last sold price, and this is a hard one to get the exact market price, but last sold price $252,000 US. 125 times $252,000 is $31.5 million. So the market cap of a first edition PSA 10 Charizard is $31.5 million. Bang. That card must have the biggest market cap out of any Pokemon card in existence, right? That's where we're wrong. Interestingly, and have a little guess, maybe leave a comment down below before I get into this, so you're not allowed to cheat, but leave a comment down below if you're still watching at this stage. What card do you think in existence has a higher market cap than first edition PSA 10 Charizard? Hopefully you guessed it. Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies. There are 15,320 PSA 10 copies. Current market price, $2,300. 15,320 multiplied by 2,300 equals 35,236,000 market cap. Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies has the highest market cap out of any Pokemon card. It has a higher market cap than a first edition PSA 10 Charizard. People talk about that Moonbryon as being the modern PSA 10 or the modern base set Charizard. And you know what? I don't think they're wrong. Like, that card is just insane. It has the highest market cap, if that means anything to you, or if it means anything in the grand scheme of things. I don't know. I'm just transferring a business or an economic term to the Pokemon card world, but man, that's interesting, isn't it? Like, that blew me away. I was thinking, like, before I even did this, I was like, oh man, first edition Charizard, like, nothing's even going to come close to that, is it? But then Umbreon VMAX eclipses it by over $4 million market cap. Insane, isn't it? So here's the practical strategy. And you might go, well, hurry up and get to it. And that's where I want to get to right now, right? So market cap, putting into a practical strategy. And this is what I want. I want to premise this with the fact that, and I sort of alluded to this at the start of the video, if you're putting in money and you're buying multiple copies of singles, you know, some people might call it buyouts. Personally, I don't care. It's your money. You do what you want to do with it. It's at your own risk. You could well spend $40,000 or $80,000 or $10,000 or $200,000 on multiple copies of PSA 10 of a particular Pokemon card. If something fluctuates on that Pokemon card negatively, it's at your risk. You have just as much chance, realistically, unless you have a crystal ball, of dropping money than you do of making money. How do you know a card's going to go up? You don't. You can use educated guesses, but none of us know what's going to go up and what's not going to go up. So here's the play. Let's use an example of Ninetales from Obsidian Flames. 12 months ago, that card raw, and this is just raw prices, I'll get to PSA 10 in a second, that card raw was $5.46 US. Right now, 12 months later, so fast forward 12 months, it's $31.79. That card is nearly 6x'd in 12 months. And look, we couldn't have predicted that. You know, we could have all thought that Obsidian Flames got a massive Darkness Ablaze like, reprint, and it could have squashed it to $4 rather than $5.46 or $3.20. Who would have thought it jumped that much? But it has. That's the fact. Also 12 months ago, and this is the great thing about the Collectr app, it shows us how many PSA 10 copies there are. So 12 months ago, there was 367 PSA 10 copies, and the card was selling for about $100 US in a PSA 10. So market cap was $36,700. So hypothetically, and this is just hypothetically, if you owned every single copy, so all three, which you're not going to, but hypothetically, all 367 copies at $100 each, you are owning $36,700 worth of Ninetales from Obsidian Flames in a PSA 10. Fast forward to today, there's 1,500 PSA 10 copies, and they're going for $323 each. So market cap is now $484,500. The market cap for Obsidian Flames has far exceeded the Ninetales, has far exceeded the percentage growth that card has got as a single or a raw single copy. So then you go, well, how do you make money off that? And look, it's a risk. And hats off if you want to have a crack at this, because personally I don't. But there's some theory and some method to this madness. So if you bought every single time a PSA 10 copy of a card came on the market and you're buying it, and let's say you somehow got lucky of that 367 and you bought 200 of them out of that 367. Think about the massive amount of growth you would have received during that time period. Even if you bought singles of examples like raw copies ungraded, you also would have seen massive amounts of growth. But like I said, if you put in that amount of money, you also run the risk of losing some of it, don't you? What if there was a massive reprint and this card retraced and got absolutely squashed into the ground? Keep in mind, of course, there's postage costs attached to selling, one single card. But the point is, this market cap and the expansion of market cap and how much those cards have grown as a total value in a PSA 10, you could continue to get a slice of that pie. Like, if you'd bought, like I said, somehow 200 copies of it, which is hypothetically probably impossible, but you did, you're going to see some pretty damn massive growth there. And you will hold a percentage of that market cap. It's like you're almost becoming a major shareholder in that card. Now, hats off to you if you want to have a crack at that. Personally, I don't have the time and resources to do that. I'd rather just buy a sealed product, sit it on the shelf or in the cupboards, watch it appreciate over time, and then sell it off when it's worth more money in the future. But this is one strategy, and it's really interesting just to apply these economic principles and see, how that principle of market cap can apply to Pokemon cards, and then maybe a practical strategy you could use to make money off it. And the practical strategy is not that difficult. It's just buying out as many raw copies or graded copies of that card as possible, so you have a fair share or a big share of the percentage in that card that you, I suppose, somewhat have an influence on the market price on that card. Now, some people may call that buying it out, and personally, I don't do it, and I don't think it's the world's best strategy, but if you'd done it over the last 6 or 9 months, you would have made a heap of money off singles. That was an interesting video, and what really interested me was how much Umbreon VMAX has, what its market value is. That's just insane. That's such a huge, $35 million for a card. That's its market cap. And just a PSA 10, let alone the 9s, the 8s, the 7s, the raw copies. Insane. I'm Michael, this is Pokey Oz. Catch everyone next time.